Hello, I'm Douglas Matthews, and this is the third video in the series. And in the previous one, we were working on the sky and we're talking about the low horizon and the fact that you really want to make sure that you don't get anything too near the middle. The other thing is we were also mentioning the different strength of paint that we're using. So some areas can be quite fine, quite thin paint, others can be a bit thicker, like down here, others can be really quite thick, like this area here where I've applied it with a palette knife and then worked into it with a brush. So we achieved this very straight horizon there by using masking tape, and the masking tape was put down here, and I was able to paint right up to the edge of the masking tape without any problem. So now I'm going to put this on the painting itself because I want to work in the water now. Now, admittedly, you could paint a really straight line, but this idea is pretty good because it makes sure that you don't end up with a kind of wibbly wobbly line across here. You want the horizon to be straight. You really want to make sure that it's the same on both sides. If it isn't, you can give it a wee adjust. That one isn't quite the same, so it's going to come down to about there. Right, so that's on, and now we're going to work into the water. Now, obviously, when you're working with sky, you find that if there's a strong shadow here, there'll be an element of it reflected in the water. If it's really light up here, then it'll be light down here. So I'm going to paint in just using a brush, because although this is for beginners, you can quite easily be a slightly more advanced painter of acrylics, but the whole idea is to have fun doing it. And I've deliberately chosen a subject matter where there's no real drawing in it. We're not dealing with perspective, we're not dealing with symmetry, we're simply having fun applying paint in a way that should give you a kind of decent sea skyscape. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just draw in an area using a little bit of cadmium red and cadmium yellow, and for the moment that's just going to indicate where I'm going to have some sand. Okay, and I can thin it down a bit with some water. I'm going to put a bit of sand coming down like this, a little bit of a spit coming in here. Now, that's really as much as you need to worry about. Now, we're going to put in some light area. So, mixing up some cobalt blue and some white with a little bit of water. I'm just using the flat of the brush and I'm painting it in. I'm making horizontal strokes like this. Right. Then I'm going to get some more white, work into that. And go across. And you can go over the tape, it doesn't really matter because once you take it off, you're not going to see it. So get some white going across there, and then go into that with a bit stronger colour. In actual fact, this that I'm working from is a view over the west coast. In actual fact, it's towards Arran from Ardrossan, which is a small town in the west of Scotland, just south of Glasgow. So here I've got some darker coming in there, and then a little touch of Prussian blue and ultramarine mixed together. And I'm going to have a little bit of shadow coming in here, a reflection of the sky in this still water. Okay. And what I'm doing is I'm using the edge of the brush rather than the point or the flat of the brush, because what I want to do is kind of create the effect of ripples in the water. Maybe a little bit of cloud there, so I'll put a little bit of shadow there, reflected in the water. Okay. Now you could quite easily use a small brush, there's no doubt about it. You could then start playing around with it, putting in little ripples if you want, like that. But that looks kind of silly. Whereas if you use the flat of the brush, you can get in these kind of scrape marks. Right? Now what you can also do is use your palette knife. Oh, the other thing is, when you're working with acrylics, make sure you keep your brushes in water when you're not using them, because they will dry and dry hard. So, what I can do here, put in a bit of texture, some scraping. That's giving me the effect of ripples in the water. Again, as I mentioned to you before, we're not looking for a photograph here. We're looking for something that's expressive. It means something to you. And the way you apply the paint and the kind of colours that you use is all an expression of you. And especially as a beginner, I don't want you to feel inhibited by doing a lot of drawing. And that's why we're working on this sea theme, because as I mentioned already, there are no real drawing areas apart from that little bit of hill in the background on the island and this little bit of sand. I mean, that's it basically. Everything else you've just kind of painted in. As you're working on the water there, you might say to yourself, oh, I don't really like that cloud there, so why don't you just do something about it while you're working and pop that in like that, so make it a wee bit fluffier. See, the thing about doing a painting is that although I'm doing the sky first and then the water, technically what you should be doing is jumping around the painting. So although I'm working on the water just now, I'm also looking at the sky and I'm seeing is there something that needs to be adjusted there. When I finish the whole thing, I'll still look at it and think to myself, no, anything else I can put in there to make it look interesting. So at the moment, that bit jutting up there I'm not so keen on, so I'm going to put a little bit of light in there to tone that down a bit. Okay, right, so we've got the water in. I want to get something a wee bit darker in there, so I'm going to use that smaller brush, mix up a little bit of the Prussian blue with the cadmium red, and then take, again, the side of the brush, and I'm going to go across there. I'm just going to tickling the surface of it. Yeah, so I'm giving it a little tint. It's almost like a woman putting on a bit of blusher. Just little tickles. Nothing too strong. All right, so I've got a couple of little lines there with the flat of the brush. There's a little bit of shadow. Okay, right, so now that that's been done, the next step is to pop in some sand down here. So I'm going to use a bit of white, some yellow, and to tone the yellow down, I'm going to use a little bit of purple, because purple and yellow are opposites in the colour spectrum, and they're very good at neutralising each other. So if a yellow, I'll show you what I'm talking about. If I put that yellow down there, oh my goodness, it's really quite raw. But if I take a little bit of purple and mix that into the yellow, you can see it kind of tones it down a bit. So it's a bit softer. But I want it warmer than that, so I'm adding a little bit of cadmium red into that mix. Popping that in there. And I'm just putting in an area of colour, altering it ever so slightly, altering the tone, maybe making it slightly kind of peachy in parts. That's a bit too bright. Oh, I'm going to get rid of that palette knife. So you can scrape it across like that. Alternatively, you can take a bit of paper towel and say, I do not like that, so wipe it off. And then you're ready to put down a bit softer colour. So here we've got slightly more subtle, almost kind of greyish tone going down in this area. So it makes it a slightly softer sand colour. And then I'm going to work my way across here. Brighten it up a little bit. Right, so we've got the kind of sand colour popped in, and it's kind of varying tones. There's not all the one colour. I've changed little bits here and there. I can lighten up sections of it. A bit of cadmium red, a bit of lemon yellow. Pop little light bits in here and there. Create kind of undulations in the colour. Yeah, there's the sand in. And then what I'm going to do is put in some rocks for kind of a bit more drama, really. So I'm going to mix up something very dark using a small brush. This is a number 6 brush. Prussian blue, cadmium red, a little touch of cadmium yellow, and I'm going to pop in some rocks here. Now what you tend to do is make sure that although the rocks may be bumpy at the top, the bottom part should be fairly flat, because as things go into the distance, things flatten out. So I'll put a couple of little stones in here. And some rocks. I'm just kind of twirling the brush about, like that. And, you know, once you've got these dark areas in, you can start putting in some undulations, some light tones and dark tones. I'll put a little bit over here. Just as a kind of balance. Everything there. And a little bit more of the cadmium red, Prussian blue, yellow. This makes a kind of almost like a very, very deep greeny colour. Pop that in like so. Maybe make it a wee bit higher there. And then flatter down here. And then some more rocks down at the bottom. That. And if you want to make it a good bit darker, maybe some alizarin crimson, cadmium yellow and Prussian blue for some darker areas in it. Don't want it all to be the same shade. And then I'm going to break it up a little just by scratching into the rocks. Get some kind of highlights on them to make it look as if they're slightly wet. Like that. there. Okay. Right, now, you may say to yourself, is it time to take that off? Why not? Let's take it off and have a look at the whole thing so far, see what needs to be done. Right, well that's what you've got so far. You might think to yourself, maybe I'm needing a bit of balance over here. So you could decide to maybe lower that area if you wanted. You can put in some more rocks here. Try that, see if that works. If it doesn't work, then we can always go over it again with white once it's dry. Yeah, I've got some really dark bits there. And then I can work into that with my palette knife and scrape off areas. Like that, okay? So you've got some highlights there. And if you felt really, really adventurous, you could get a fine brush, which I don't have. So I'll just use the edge of this one. Pop in a few seagulls there, if you fancy. You can make them a wee bit darker in part. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. You may decide that you want to do something about the horizon. Maybe this part here should have a bit more interest in it. So you might decide that you're going to have a wee range of hills in the background there just for the look of things, or for the composition. You can soften it with your finger like that if you want. Okay. And if you wanted to, you can work into the clouds again, adding bits that you feel necessary, maybe a bit more fluffy in that, a bit fluffy in here. And this is much, much thicker paint that's going on now. We can pop these bits in, maybe break that up a bit more, give that kind of flatter area there. And then, just to finish off, you really want to get a few light areas down at the bottom here, just to break up your surface. So it's just a bit of pure white there, going in, basically suggesting waves coming in, going across the way. If you're really stuck about getting something horizontal, then turn the painting vertically and pull down towards you. You find that's easier. Pop that in there, then you can give it another little scratch, like that with your brush, just break it up. Okay, so that's the idea. As you can see from that painting, there's been next to no drawing in it. It's all about just enjoying yourself, having fun, applying paint, getting used to paint, and if at the end you don't like it, well, just paint over it again and start afresh. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.